What we see now, more on the software development side than on the cloud side, is that we can do more with less. Meaning, if before a client would require 5 people to do a project over a 6-month period or an 8-month or a 12-month period, now we feel confident that we can do that with 3, for example. Or if it's a 3-person team, maybe we do it with 1.5 or 2, something like that. So there's the opportunity there is to do things better and faster.
Welcome to the Growth Experts Podcast. On today's episode, we have Dennis Bruce. He is the CEO and founder of TangoNet Solutions. How are you doing today?
Hi, how you doing, Derek?
Good. Thank you for joining us on the Growth Experts Podcast. Excited to share some insights into your background. So can you share a bit about your role and how it fits into the bigger picture over at TangoNet?
So as a founder, my role was to get it off the ground initially, right? So that happened in 2007. Basically, what I do now is I run the company as any CEO does and work a lot with strategic clients in helping them manage different types of solutions and helping them build and or deliver technology solutions, primarily through our nearshore teams in Argentina, but also working together in how we integrate those teams, which many times happens with our teams integrating into client teams. So there's a little bit of work to be done there at times, usually not heavy lifting, but sometimes there are things that have to be taken into consideration.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So what does a typical day look like for you?
So there's a lot of, in my role, there's a lot of contact, touch points with fellow CEOs. Many of our clients, I have direct relationships with the CEOs. A lot of those CEOs are tech CEOs, so they have in their own minds, their own ideas about what they want to build or what they want to deliver and how they want to deliver it and that type of thing. So we typically look at that. I'm looking at that with them from a more strategic perspective and seeing, at the back of my mind, I'm thinking as we go along, okay, we're talking because they potentially need a team to help them deliver. So that's where we come in. And that team might be, as I mentioned earlier, it might be a mixed team where we're working together with their teams, or it might be us working in a standalone way. Could be infrastructure, could be software development, it could be AI development, AI ops, DevOps, could be any one of those things or a combination of things. So we're working to try to see what the best strategic fit is to help them build and or deliver their solutions.
Awesome. Okay. So what major shifts are you currently seeing in your industry, Dennis, right now?
So what we saw, thanks in part to the AI bombardment, if we can say it that way, is that there was a lot of talk around, how AI was going to replace traditional software development, okay? And we see, at least from our experience, is that there are a lot of different things going on. Number one is that we're seeing it as an important productivity tool for our developers, okay? So let's call that AI-assisted development, and that's an important thing in terms of, let's say, increasing developer productivity. Okay, not replacing the developer, but increasing the productivity. That's number one.
Are we talking like Claude or other?
Yeah, Claude. There's a few out there now that are. Claude is a big one. There are a few others that our teams are using. Copilot, I know that they've used that. A few other ones that I just don't remember off the top of my head because it seems like they're changing constantly, right? So that's one aspect of it. Okay. And I think that the fact that they are changing so quickly is also part of the problem, because what you might be using today might be considered obsolete, 3 months from now. So that's part of the challenge too. So there's the aspect of developer productivity, which is an important one. There's also the aspect of an over-reliance on AI, because we've seen also that our teams, for example, one of our lead architects took over, or they had to integrate a solution that was built by another development team. And he said, look, he spent more time debugging and rewriting some of that code because after a while, after a couple of releases, he could see pattern where he was able to recognize that, hey, this is all AI developed and nobody's done any revision on this. And some code that's, even though it compiles correctly or whatever, it's out of context. It's giving me the wrong solution. Okay. So there is, I think, a way, and I don't know if anybody has the solution to this, but what's the right mix? Where is it that these AI tools come into play, but it's not a situation in which the inmates are on the asylum, right? You've got to have, at least for now, you have to have a human in the loop and a very highly skilled human in the loop at the same time. So I think that that's another aspect of what we're seeing. Another aspect that we've seen, like, let's say, in what's being published across the internet, is some of the, I would call it, blowback of the AI development, that it's, a lot of the solutions, a lot of the POCs that are being developed are not producing the intended results for the businesses, and they're abandoning them. We're seeing some of that. We're seeing more and more of that. And that might just be part of the evolutionary process of this whole AI development or AI-enabled solution development. So those are some of the things that we're seeing, Derek. It's still a very, I think, call it fluid situation. It's changing. We don't know where it's going yet, but we do know that it's playing an important role, and that important role will probably increase or change somewhat as time goes on.
Yeah. So in terms of the, this new AI landscape, if you will, this trends and Claude and everything like that, how has AI or these trends impacted your business or your growth strategy?
So what we see now, more on the software development side than on the cloud side, is that we can do more with less. Meaning, if before a client would require 5 people to do a project over a 6-month period or an 8-month or a 12-month period, now we feel confident that we can do that with 3, for example. Or if it's a 3-person team, maybe we do it 1.5 or 2, something like that. So there's the opportunity there is to do things better and faster if you do it in a very, let's say, if you use the right criteria for how you're going to use those tools, like I mentioned earlier. But yeah, that's basically the impact we're seeing. We're going to do smaller teams. We can do it faster. We're seeing the productivity enhancements. So those are the 2 big impacts that we'll see.
Awesome. And can you share a bit about your structure, how you deliver the nearshore development solutions in regards to the technology? Are you allowed to share, your structure and how you service your clients?
Yeah, so basically, there's a couple of different things that goes on. Now, first of all, everyone, let's say from the technical side, is in Argentina, or almost okay? There are some people in other parts of Latin America, some people in other parts of the world as well. We just try to put the best fit, best highly qualified people on the projects that we can, okay? So, it really depends a lot. How we structure and how we deliver depends a lot on the client's dynamics. Are they well structured? Can they manage a nearshore development team? Do they have the structure to do that? Are they going to take on the project or product management role? Or do we need to do that? Okay. Or do we need to share it? A lot of it depends on how the client is structured and how they want to take this forward. Many times as teams, many times it evolves. For example, if we start out with a 1 or 2-person team, as that team grows, maybe they say, look, it's too much of a burden for me to handle 2, 3, 4, 5 people, whatever it is. Can't we put on let's say, a team lead, a service delivery manager, or a product liaison or project liaison? Depends on, the technical nature of the project, what exactly that person is. But let's call them a service delivery manager, and let me interface with that person. And then we'll just sort of channel the workflow and workloads to the team, based on, let's say, a more hierarchical structure of management. So that's sort of where that goes. Sometimes the customer is quite happy fulfilling that role themselves. In other words, they're going to do that SDM, that service delivery management, on their side, and they're okay with managing multiple people because they already have the structure in place for it. Sometimes they don't, which is why you have to look at, and this is some of the things that I'm talking about with our clients, is look, how can we structure this the most efficient way to get these things done, to get these projects delivered, without it being a burden for you.
Yeah, without it being a burden. That way it's an easy process for both parties involved, and you have all your ducks in a row and you can execute. So what, in mind, what's working well for you right now, or your teams, in that structure context, and what's been frustrating?
The best part, I think, of this that we've seen is when we have on a team, when we have a team allocated, is that we have a team lead in some form. Like there's somebody who rises above, and it might be technical, it might be more project management, but somebody who has, let's say, an overview of what needs to be developed, and is not just, putting heads down, hands on keyboard, and, pumping out code or pumping out cloud infrastructure or whatever. They've got a vision, based on the dialogue with the client, and they understand what is it that they're trying to build, and what the value, and really importantly, what the value of that is. And that's really hugely important. We try to establish those things up front, but it's not always that evident. So we lean on our team leads to say, okay, look, let's find out, let's make sure we're building something that at the end, when it's all said and done, this has some type of quantifiable benefit for the client.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, which metrics are you most focused on improving?
So the most important metric is respecting, let's say, sprint deadlines and that type of thing, in terms of both quality and deliverables, time management and that type of thing. Is, we're focused on, if we need to say this to the client in a diplomatic way, like, look, if we have to push back because, these deliverables can't be done in a 2-week sprint, we divide them up into 2 sprints, and let's look at where we need to focus the priorities. And that gets back to what I mentioned just a moment ago about, you have to have somebody who can recognize that and is not just, saying yes, putting their heads down on the keyboard, and then when it comes to, sprint deliverable time, or, the daily or the weekly that, where we discuss the deliverables, you're off target. So we want to make sure we try to capture that up front. And that's really the most important thing, is that we get a clear understanding of what the deliverables are within the deliverable time period, within that sprint, or whatever other definition they want to use, and that we're respecting that. And if we don't feel comfortable with that, we got to push back. We got to say, look, this has got to be, we got to divide this up into a couple of sprints or whatever. Let's look at the priorities. And clients really do appreciate that. For the most part, they appreciate. They want that push. They want us to say, hey, look, it's not reasonable to think that we're going to deliver this in 2 weeks. Either let's extend the sprint, let's divide the deliverables, or let's figure out something else.
Yeah, definitely. So where do you want TangoNet Solutions to be in, 6, 12 months from now or upwards?
So what we're doing right now, Derek, is we are moving more into some niche areas, where we think it's better for us to focus on certain technology stacks, certain types of platforms and that type of thing. So whereas we do a lot of staff augmentation and different platforms and the traditional type of development, what we feel that we're the strongest in is in particular in Python and the Python ecosystem libraries, and especially things like visual analytics and data analytics and that type of thing, which has a strong Python component, interfacing with LLMs, that type of thing, as well as cloud and DevOps engineering. So those are 2 areas, Python development, which might also be automation. So Python has, it's kind of, I would say horizontal in its reach, as well as being vertical, is that it's an automation platform. It interfaces well and is a key component of AI-enabled solutions. And it's, your classic software development or product development tool as well. So Python development, cloud engineering, and in particular, what we're seeing now because of AI is AI ops. So that's an area that we look at as being an extension of cloud and DevOps type of engineering, and is becoming more and more necessary because of the proliferation of AI solutions, and the fact that we can build AI solutions within a DevOps tool chain, let's say. For example, observability and, taking information from different sources and producing some output in the way of analytics that gives the client a very clear view of what's going on, not only in their infrastructure, but also in their applications, and, get an early warning system set up so that they know where the problems are festering before they actually come to the surface.
Yeah, awesome. So what is your target ICP, or, your customer base? What type of clients do you guys typically bring into or provide solutions for?
So we have 2 addressable markets. One is the sort of small to mid-market SaaS companies that are looking to scale, and hiring for all of their software development or their cloud infrastructure or their AI ops or whatever. It just isn't practical. It's not a practical scalability solution. They need to hire, they need to do key hires, which is really, by the way, even for us, they have the right people on their side. But for us, we are somebody who can step in and maybe take a part of the development. Maybe there's something that's outside of their core, for example, where their teams are working on their core, but they need some peripheral solutions that complement or integrate into that core. That's one use case for us. Another one would be that, we're handling, maybe some legacy application modernization while they're working on developing new solutions. That's another one. So that's the SaaS market. And the other one is the what we call the systems integrator and managed services provider market, where we're helping them deliver their solutions to bigger clients. And that might be Fortune, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 clients, where it doesn't make sense for them just to staff up for all these spiky workloads they have. We can fill in a gap to help them deliver in a very transparent way to their clients, taking on a piece of a project, or even sometimes all of a project where they may not have the skill sets or their team is just flat out on other projects.
Oh yeah. So what's exciting that anything exciting that you guys are working on this year, or any clients that you could vaguely talk about without getting into NDA or anything like that you guys are working on?
Can talk about a couple of things at a high level. I mentioned earlier that the whole AI ops thing is starting to come around. And when my teams started mentioning that to me, I think about 6 months ago or so, they said, look, we're working on something that we're calling AI ops. And I'm like, what's that? So we went down this, we saw that there's some definitions. It's a real thing. It's not invented by us by any means. It's something that's real. And it's because of the fact that these new tools are allowing us they're allowing two things. They're allowing us to build AI solutions that are tightly integrated with cloud infrastructure. And sometimes they are part of the cloud infrastructure in a way that, for example, in observability, where we're taking, different types of information from logs and from other places, and we're giving a more comprehensive view through an analytics front end, such as Grafana, for example, of what is going on in real time in their environments, but much more so than we did before, because AI is allowing us to do that.
Yeah.
So that's something that's been exciting. We see that there's a lot of future for it in terms of really being able to, develop a very, very tight early warning system that's cloud-based, ties in a lot of tools that, are not, in some cases they're open source, in some cases client already has them and they're not using them to their fullest extent. So there's been some very innovative things we've done there in AI ops. And then the other thing is that, building, AI solutions, some clients, they really want, they're very forward-looking clients, and they want, one client, for example, he wants to build AI agents to run his business. He's like, in my mind, it's a bridge too far. We are making progress. We are participating in that development very tightly with Python, with cloud development, with an AI specific developer, which is also partly Python.
So what type of industry is it? Are you allowed to talk about that?
It's in what I can say, it's recycling. It's a very niche recycling industry. So that's as far as I can go with that. But it's very, very interesting. We're discovering together along the way, some constraints, some things that require a lot of definition. And I'll say this about AI solutions is that you really need to look with a critical eye at what you're doing internally to see what needs to be automated and how, because that's not an easy thing. We get a lot of people asking us, hey, do you have consultants that can look at my business processes to see where I can, what the best way of automation is? I know that there's probably some AI solutions that you can, that can do that. There probably needs to be some humans in the loop, but we've gotten that a number of times. And I think that's going to be a big thing for these AI solutions, is to have somebody, call it business process re-engineering, like what we used to call it years ago. I think that's starting to come back a little bit in terms of applying AI in an efficient and effective way.
Yeah. So what would you want people to know that would want to hire you for your services? If someone's, listening to this right now, and you were to direct it at that one person, what would be your unique value proposition, or why should they want to work with you?
Yeah, so that's a good one. Uh, it's a tough
No
one.
pressure, no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. No pressure. Well, we'll take the pressure. We'll run with that ball.
Yeah.
So, we have very highly skilled senior people who can understand, like I said, or said this at the outset, who can understand, let's say, the solution or help the client arrive at a solution. Like, what is the benefit of this? What is it that, what is the end game? What's the outcome? If we build this, what's going to change? What's going to have, a lot of times, the clients know that. I mean, it's not that they don't know, but sometimes you got to bring it out of them a little bit, because that helps us, seeing the end game helps us help them. Okay. And that goes at all levels. That goes, when I'm talking to the CEO, or when one of our tech leads is talking to the PM on the client side, all of that, if we have together a clear understanding on what's on the other side of this solution, and we're constantly looking to calibrate that, because sometimes things change, and sometimes we're building solutions for clients that, for example, and we've seen this happen, where the product market fit isn't right. We can go down a path, and not that we're involved in determining the product market fit, because we're not, but the client is, and they see that as the solution gets developed, they start seeing that, ideas start coming to them, and they start, revisiting that whole product market fit. And sometimes it isn't. So what do we do, right? Do we pivot? Can we use what's built? Can we, for that pivot, right? That's something that's an important thing. Or do we have to throw it away and start over again, which is a frustrating thing to do. But
Then you gotta reverse engineer everything.
yeah, I mean, sometimes the product market fit isn't there. It happens. And, there isn't a practical way to pivot to something else. And you've either got to put it on hold until that gets redefined, or you got to throw it away or figure out another way forward.
Yeah.
So, we're keenly, tied into that. I mean, to the extent that we can be. Ultimately, it's the client who decides that, but, sometimes, we've developed a little bit of an instinct for it, I would say. Sometimes we say, is this really, really good? And, have those tough love conversations with the clients. Are you really sure about this?
Yeah.
No, we want to make sure we're helping. It's not something that we're pushing back on necessarily, but, it doesn't hurt to, to have a little bit of tough love in the
Yeah,
conversation.
definitely. Awesome. Well, Dennis Bruce, everyone, CEO, founder of TangoNet Solutions. If you guys want to check him out, his information is in the description below. That's tangonetsolutions.com. Dennis Bruce is also located on LinkedIn if you want to check out his profile. Thank you so much for joining us on the Growth Experts Podcast, Dennis. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Derek. My pleasure. Take care.
Awesome.